Okay, hello. So, I haven't done a video for a while, but this one's going to be a corker, I promise. This is going to all be about you applying for your first Band 5 position as a physiotherapist. So this is super exciting. So I recently applied and I was amazingly successful. I was amazed by being successful and getting my first Band 5 post. So I thought, well, why not transfer some of the things I've learnt about that application process and about the interview to you guys. Hopefully you'll be able to use some of it to be able to make sure you're as successful and you get through the process with as little stress as possible. So without further ado, let's roll the video. Okay, so we're looking at applying for your first Band 5 job. This is super exciting. So for those of you who don't know, I recently applied just before Christmas for my first Band 5 post. I was shortlisted for interview, and in the beginning of January, whilst on placement, I undertook the interview day with some assessments as well, and on the Monday I got a call to say I'd been successful. So I'm absolutely just over the moon to think that come June, July, I'm going to be starting my first Band 5 post. So obviously that success getting through made me think about what I'd done to prepare, etc. And then a few people have been contacting me to ask for any advice about what they should do or what I would advise. So first and foremost, my advice is purely based on what I went through. I'm in no way positioned with the experience to offer actual advice on how to prepare for your interview and for your application for a Band 5 post. I have no experience in interviewing for these posts per se, or sort of shortlisting. So it is important for me to note that this is really just a vlog to show you what I did and what I think helped and what I think might help you. So I'm going to go through some key things. I'm going to look at kind of what information you can go and find, support, some tips and tricks around that, things that if I was you I'd be looking at, and things I did look at, or things I've subsequently found out that I could have looked at. And then I'm going to look at that personal statement, and then I'm also going to talk you through kind of the interview as well, and then I'll talk to you about my personal experience of what I did. So I've got a long list. I kind of actually did a bit of a crib sheet on this one here because a few people I think might be interested in this, and if you are interested, put it in the comments and we can contact each other and I can email you this across. So basically what I'm covering in the video in a Word format. So first and foremost, you're at university with a team of very experienced lecturers who are on hand to give you probably the best advice and support regarding making your first application. And what I would say is use them, because they are there and they have a vested interest in you getting your job. At the end of the day, the university looks better if it has 100% employment post graduation. So apart from just the fact that they want you to succeed because they're your lecturers and that's why they do the job, the university as a whole has a desire to get you into your first job. So go and speak to your personal tutor, any lecturers that you get on with, any lecturers that you particularly respect, and some of them may even probably have had experience interviewing for posts. So that's my first tip. They'll also be running sessions. If you're in your third year, there'll be sessions going on at your university giving you ideas of how you should be applying. What's key there is they will have specifics about the trusts that are local. So for instance, where I am, we had one of the therapy manager from a very local hospital come in and talk to us about their hospital process of application. So it'll be more relevant to what you might actually be going through, because every trust is different and the interviews may be slightly different, whether they have an assessment element to the interview day, whether they have an open day prior or on the same day as interviews, and also give you a bit of a heads up as when their posts might be being advertised. So that's the first thing there. The next tip I've got, and I'd like to just publicly say a big thank you to Beth at Generation HP, because she gave me some great advice, some really good support, and the Instagram page that Generation AHP have now has got, if you go onto the highlights on their main page, and you'll find along there their stories, and you'll find about interview and job preparation. And there's some great tips on there. There's people asking questions that have had an answer. So check them out. That's at Generation AHP, because they are superb and really, really worth checking out. There's a lot of work that goes into running that page, and it's becoming a really quite an incredible port of call for students. So the next thing is, I mentioned it a minute ago, look for open days. So your trust will no doubt start putting out adverts for open days, and you can go along, you can see the hospital, ask relevant questions, write stuff down, and start preparing things that you might want to look up, or even ask on interview day to make yourself sound like you know what you're talking about. It does honestly help. And you can also ask questions about things like research. What's new at the hospital? What sort of innovative ideas or things are they going through that might be of interest to you? And we'll talk about later why that might be important. So, obviously, and hopefully you have all done this, but you may not have, and that's look at the Trust website. Websites contain a plethora of information, and you want to be looking up things like the latest news tab, research, what's going on, get accustomed to what's actually happening at the hospital that you're interested in. But most importantly, and I think this is really important, is look at it from a point of view, actually, what are you interested in? Why are you applying to that hospital or that trust? And start thinking of that, have that in the back of your mind all the time. So when you're reading things, just think, oh, that's really cool. Well, if you thought that when you read it, write it down, because that will show that give you a really good reason why you're applying in the first place, and why you fit them, why they fit you. It starts building a proper kind of bridge as to why you're applying and why they should kind of want you and why you want them. Look up the latest CQC reports. Okay, so that's the Care Quality Commission. They do checks, big visits to hospitals. Your hospital will have had one at some point. Have a look at it. Where did they do well? Where did they fall down? And where they fell down, what are they doing about it? So in the report, this does take a bit of time, but it's worth it. In the CQC report, it will show you what they did well on, but where they've fallen down, it'll show you what maybe they're doing about it. If they've had a revisit, and it'll show what they did. It's a really good insight into the workings of that hospital. Think obviously physiotherapy in your head, and if there are any other allied health professionals watching this, think of your profession when you're reading that document. They are big documents, however, they're worth it. You're in year 3, I'm sure you'll have known some of the years above you. Talk to them, find out, has anyone applied and started working at the trust that you're looking at working in? If so, pick up the phone, pick up the Insta, pick up the Twitter, pick up the Facebook, and contact them and ask them, what's it like working there? What's new? What's going on? What don't they like? Find some things, because at the end of the day, it might not be the trust for you. So, important. Find out what the physio rotations are. So what rotations are on offer at that university hospital. Mine's going to be a university hospital, but find out what the trust rotations are, because actually they might ask you that question to start with, but also it's good. Do those rotations fit what you want out of your first Band 5 job? Have you thought about what you want out of your first Band 5 job? What are the specialisms of the hospital? So the hospital I applied for, they had a specialist area in the region, which is a large peninsular region. They were the go-to hospital for the specialism. I think actually it's probably well on Twitter. So Plymouth Hospital, Trauma Hospital, that was their big area. And when I delved into that, I found loads of stuff about how they use specialist skills of military personnel to bolster that trauma side of things, and how I just thought it's fascinating, and it gave me lots to kind of talk about in my interview. Demographics of the population, find out who are the patients that you'll be seeing. Is there a particular demographic? And if so, who are they? And how does that change things at all? And I've just lost my notes. Here we are. Okay. So that gives you some ideas of kind of what to look at. Think about where you are, what's their catchment area, how many patients do they have coming in there, do they have a high turnover, those are sorts of things. Okay, right, now next thing which I'm sure you'll be doing when you apply for your job, on the NHS jobs, just while I'm on there, get on NHS jobs, register on there and set up the alert for any new jobs that use the filter. Okay, so on NHS jobs, when you apply for your trust, it'll come up with some documents, a job specification, and things like, might say trust values, trust vision, documentation, future, all those sorts of things. Print them off or download them and get those ready and to start looking at, because one of those things will be the trust values and vision. What is your trust value or values, and what is its vision? Learn it off by heart. Think about what it means to you. Think about your experiences in your placements, outside of placements, in previous work, in life, that show that you fit those values or you have applied those values. It's a question that I got asked, and I think it's a good question because they have those values for a reason. I, for one, saw the values and I really, really liked them, and it started my personal statement about how actually their trust values were really pretty much fitted why I started physiotherapy in the first place, and certainly what's driven me through this degree. That helped. So yeah, learn it off by heart. Think about what it means to you as a potential physio. Do you agree with it? If you do, why? And do you see yourself wanting to follow that vision and those values? Okay, so I think that's quite a few. You've got the person specification, which you need to have next to you when you're writing a personal statement. So there's some kind of overview of some things you need. Right, let's get on to this person specification. So when you apply on NHS jobs, your CV is now just a pre-filled thing where you'll go through your previous qualifications, your skills, your CPD, those sorts of things that you've done. So start thinking about what CPD you've done, what courses. And then you'll have your personal statement. This is what they will use, or a lot of it they use, to shortlist you. You need to sell yourself against the personal specification. So what I did, and again, this is me giving you advice based on what I did rather than professional advice. What I did is I took the personal specification and I first of all started a sort of why I wanted to work with that particular trust. Make sure you make it specific to that trust, and if you're applying to 3 or 4 trusts, you're going to need, and I really would suggest you do this, you need to write 3 or 4 separate personal statements. Granted, the big chunks of it may well be similar or very the same, but certainly your opening paragraph needs to be completely unique, because your trust wants to know why you want to work with them, not why you want to be a physiotherapist, because it's kind of a given that you want to be a physiotherapist, but why do you want to work at that trust? So think about those values, think about the vision, think about the specialty of there, see why we're looking at all those things previously. So fit your personal statement. Your personal statement should link in with the person specification. Your person specification for that trust will have desirables and essentials. There'll be 2 columns. And you must hit those essentials. Now, obviously, some of those essentials will be that you've got a HCP registration and you've got your BSc ONS or equivalent physiotherapy qualification. So obviously that's coming. But the rest of it, you know, they're looking tick, 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 tick. Do you fit them? You need to tell them that you fit them. So where the person specification might talk about flexibility or good communication skills, you need to use some examples in your personal statement where you categorically tell them what you know that you cover that personal specification. Obviously, you can't just say I'm a really good communicator. You need to say I have excellent communication skills, interpersonal, and I've shown this when specifically in my placements on one specific occasion. Give an example how you produced great communication skills. Who did you communicate with? What was it that was good about it? If you want to show that you have compassion and empathy, give an example of when you've shown compassion and empathy. What I tried to do in my personal statement is pick some chunky recent examples that covered a multitude of the things on the person specification. I tried to think of examples that showed that I was able to prioritise caseloads, show empathy and compassion to patients, communicate with patients who were maybe I had to adapt my communication for, working as part of a multidisciplinary team. How did I work with the rest of the team to make the patient the centre of what I was doing and make their care the very best it could? How did I work in a timely manner? How was I flexible with my working? And so there's an example there. So I tried to use a one example to cover several things. And if you think hard enough and plan this, you'll be able to do that, because it's part of the marking scheme for your placements. Well, it is ours, so that might be different at different universities. Most importantly, your personal statement is personal. It is your statement. It's not Gary's, it's not Sandra's, and it's not Goliath's over there. It's your personal statement. So don't ever ask to see someone else's personal statement to get an idea of what to write, because it is absolutely, in my personal opinion, not just a pointless exercise, but also one that could hinder your ability to write a personal statement about you, your experiences, your reasons for wanting to be a physio, your reasons to applying for a trust. It's all about you and that trust. At the end of the day, it's going to be a transaction, a collaborative working with you and that trust. Okay, so that's what it needs to stay as. So think about that trust, your experiences, and show why they need you in your team. That's what you want to be showing. Okay, so you can start off with why you're interested in them, but then you need to really turn it around and say, right, okay, this is why you, X NHS Trust, want me. This is why. Okay. So never copy and paste anything. Obviously, that's plagiarism, and it will do you no favours whatsoever. They want to be interested in your statement, so make it interesting. Think of some examples that aren't necessarily physio related. Don't be afraid to use something. I had a nice big paragraph in there about my outside hobby, and how I'm a running coach, head coach for a running club, and I used an example from that was about dealing with difficult situations. Focus on examples to back up your statements. We said that. Use real examples. As if you use a real example, almost a sort of a smaller version of that story, it will cover several things on the specification. Don't be afraid to use examples outside of physio and placement. You might be in a sports team, a volunteer role, a committee position, whatever it might be. There'll be some examples. So I think that's everything for the personal statement. Again, I'm just going to reiterate, this is my personal advice. It's not professional advice. Use your university tutors, Generation AHP, and other people who have got that experience to give you that. This is what I've done and what I found useful. So we're on to the interview. Now, the interviews are different depending on where you go. And the trust I went to have just recently changed their interview process to include an assessment element, some practical assessments. So I'm going to cover first of all the actual interview itself. So this is the standard face-to-face panel interview, whereby you'll sit down and they will ask you a set of questions and record your response and so forth. So first things first, and this is again my personal, and there might be some people who disagree with this, and I'm not saying this is necessarily right, it's real life. Dress to impress. First impressions are natural, it's part of human nature, and whether like it or lump it, we will all do it. So if you turn up in an unironed shirt and you look dishevelled, it's not going to give you the best start. And I'm sure some people will disagree with this, but you need to look like you want to be there, like it means something to you, like you've prepared and you've put effort into it. So think about an interview. It's your time to show you at your very best. So I wore a suit, a shirt. I ironed my shirt about 3 times to make sure it was absolutely pristine, and I ironed my tie. I got my suit dry clean specially. So just think about what you're wearing to the interview. Do double check on the interview information and your invitation to interview that they don't want you to wear your uniform, because that might also be the case. And if you're unsure, contact the recruitment team on the NHS jobs application and find out. They don't mind. I phoned 4 times to check certain things, so they don't mind. So don't underestimate the power of first impressions. On the same note, smile. As you arrive at the hospital, you are straight away on show. You do not know that the person that you're driving behind into the car park of the hospital isn't going to be the person interviewing you. So if they're driving really slowly and you think they're a bit annoying, don't toot your horn. Smile at everyone through the window. Just smile. Be polite to everyone, because it could come back to bite you. And as you arrive, just be friendly and smile and talk. But smiling is something that when you're really nervous, it can be one of the first things to disappear. So it's really worth remembering for the interview that they want you. If you've got through to your interview, it means your personal statement was good. It means that they like the sound of you. And in this current climate of physiotherapy, there is a shortage of physiotherapists. So the chances are the hospital are going to want to employ you. So they're not there to catch you out and to throw you off. They're there to get the best out of you so they can employ you. So do have that in the back of your mind when you go into this. So another thing to say, if you're nervous, brilliant. Okay? Because if you're nervous, it means you want it. It means you care. It means you're concerned about how well you do because you want the job. So kind of harness those nerves. Don't let them get the better of you. But at the same time, think of them as good. Be relieved you're nervous. I was trembling, and more just as much as I was when I first went for my interview to get onto my degree programme. So you can't prepare for specific questions, and that's key. And most people will tell you this. You can find on the internet questions that you might be asked in a physiotherapy interview. I'm sure it's the same for other allied health professionals. You simply can't prepare for every single one of them. Chances are at this stage you will have your degree to cope with as well. So you just haven't got the time or the resources necessarily to go through every single question that could be asked. Because believe you me, I said and I was told not to do this, and then someone told me some questions that they thought might be in the interview. None of them were in the interview, and I prepared really well for them. So it just proved that those people who told me were right, not to prepare for specifics. But what you can do is prepare some good, solid examples of things you've encountered on placements that show you at your best. So think of the vision and the values of the trust. What examples show those things? What examples show you working as part of an MDT? What examples show that you've prioritised workload, that you've communicated with a patient that was hard to communicate with, that you've adapted your communication? Think of these things that you did on your placement. Think of a patient that you felt that you really, really did well with. Think of an achievement on placement. Another thing I think about as well is the chances are they are also going to want to make sure that you're safe as a Band 5. Now, as a Band 5 physiotherapist, you are considered still in your learning phase of a physiotherapy career. So you're not expected to know everything. So therefore, they are expecting you to ask when you're not sure. So they will probably throw in some questions. And if you're thinking, I really don't know what I would do, that's probably what they want to hear. Along with, I would check with my senior or one of the senior physiotherapists on shift. If you weren't sure of anything, they're not going to think, gosh, they don't even know that. They're going to be thinking, brilliant. If they don't know it, they'll check with someone, so they're not going to make an unsafe decision. So prepare the examples, that's fine. Patient-centered care is going to be a big thing. It usually is, because it is just what we do. So think of patient-centered care. When have you dealt with a patient and that they've been at the centre? Think of examples maybe where you've had to fight for your patient a bit. If you maybe thought, even as a student, that they weren't quite ready for discharge, but the medical team thought they were. Did you have to have conversations and discussions to advocate for your patient? Think about that. So, again, I will reiterate, you're applying for a Band 5 post, not a Band 7, so they're not expecting you to know everything, and far, far from it. So, that's pretty much it for interview, because really it is very much down to the trust and what they'll go through. But I think it's having those examples of things that you've done on placement that have been good, and think about those, and just bring them back to your memory. Go back to your reflections. Hopefully you've been using the e-portfolio on CSP or Pebblepad, something like that, or wherever you record your reflections. Go back to them. This is where you'll realise, and if any first and second years are watching this, do your reflections, because now you need them to go back and think, oh yeah, I forgot about that patient. That was a brilliant example of how I changed my communication, or adapted my communication for that patient. Think about that. So now I'm just going to cover briefly, because this video is very long now, I'm going to cover how my interview went and how the day unfolded. So my interview day was a 9 till 5. And we arrived, we got a bit of a presentation about the trust and values and vision, just in case we hadn't already seen it. We then got a tour of the hospital, so we split up into groups and we went on a great tour, got a really good chance to ask questions and find out a bit more about the hospital and see it firsthand. I, for one, hadn't had a placement at the main hospital, so it was really good to see. We then came back and we had a timetable for our practical exams, and they were split into 3 sections. We had a respiratory station, an MSK orthopaedic station, and a neuro station. They were separate rooms, and each one had one of the interviewers, or 2, depending if they needed a model in there. We had a timetable and we got called into each one, and they were either a piece of paper with some written questions. So the respiratory one was a bit more detailed than I thought it would be. Did actually go into ABGs, normal values, gave me some ABGs, and I had to work out what they actually meant. I had to diagnose that, and it was a respiratory acidosis, I think. And then it talked about sort of things that could be causing a patient to be breathless. What else did it go for? So I think it gave me an example of a patient and what method of oxygen would be most useful, things like that. So the questions did have to kind of bring back my respiratory things. That was the other one, FVC and FEV1, and had to remember what that was and give a description of that. So that was that, and then the orthopaedic MSK placement had to do a full lower limb neuro exam. Then had another patient who had a ankle ORIF, and I had to get them up and show them how to use crutches. So again, they're checking for safety there. How safe was I? Then that did include some other bits, but I can't remember what it was. And then the neuro exam was Viva, basically, and asking me questions. So it gave me a patient, and they'd had, I think, was a right-sided sudden stroke. Oh, my light's just gone off. Hopefully you can still see me. One of my lights just went out. So the neuro one was a Viva, and they were just going through specifics on what the kind of a patient example, what would I expect to see with that patient presentation, and then it went on to what could I do about it. Signs and symptoms of Parkinson's. For any one of those, how might I help that patient? There was another patient example of a patient that was confused and slightly nauseous. What would I do to mobilise them? Would I mobilise them, etc.? How would I do that? They were hinting there at team working. So that was the kind of thing for the stations. And it was really, really good, actually. It was nerve-wracking, massively, but it was actually really, really good. And again, couldn't prepare for it because we had no idea. I didn't even know what stations were going to be there. I just knew there were going to be 3 practical stations. So it was kind of good, really, not knowing, because I was in the middle of my MSK placement. I didn't really have time to prepare, and I couldn't have gone through and prepared and relearned or recovered all of my year 1, 2 and 3 neuro-respiratory and MSK. So it was just really hoping that it would all come back, and it did. It was fine. So then we had lunch, and then we had our interview timetable, and we had a 45-minute or 40-minute interview. So there was 2 people interviewing, asking questions. And I could tell you what questions they asked, I think, but again, it doesn't really help. Some of the things they do specifically ask, they did ask about the values and give me some examples of how I've met the values. I had to repeat them, so I did have to know them off by heart. And they gave me an example of where I witnessed some poor behaviour from another member of staff and how I would deal with it. They gave me another situations of how I it's like team working, prioritising caseload. Well, that was another thing on the respiratory thing. We had 5 different patients on a ward, and they gave you their sort of presenting conditions or sort of oxygen levels or what things like that, and you had to prioritise which ones needed to be seen. But yeah, so the actual interview itself, they give you some questions, and you'd have to talk. Take your portfolio, even if they don't ask for it, show them your portfolio of evidence of your CPD. And yeah, just show, don't be afraid to this is your time to show off. It's your time to boast about how good you are. Most of us as physios find that quite difficult to do, so practice it. If you've got a friend, family member, get them to ask you just a simple question of, why do you want to work as a physiotherapist at this trust? And answer it. Be truthful, but be passionate and real. Ask them some, give some examples of a patient that you've had to deal with and that's you've had to change your communication for. Think of that. So think of those examples that we talked about earlier. You've used some examples on your personal statement, so pull out some of those out of the bag. But that's really all you can practice. Really, is good quality examples of where you've dealt with patients really well. And you've worked as an MDT on the wards where you've maybe been working in the community on your own if you've been a physio assistant. Great examples. I used one of those twice, I think. So I think that's all. I think the best thing here is probably in the comments below, do ask any questions. I may do some other videos backing this up. So what I would suggest is just below down here, you can subscribe. So click the subscribe button and the little bell. Then that means any new videos that I put up around this kind of theme, you'll get a notification to say that they've come up. All right. So I will do that, and obviously going forward, I'm going to do some as starting a band 5 position and just talk through kind of my experience. So hopefully you can kind of follow on that, and hopefully some of these have been useful. And if they have been useful, please give it a like. It does help me massively. Share this with any other physio students and friends you've got that you think might be applying. Share it on Twitter and across. And to say subscribing helps massively because it helps other people find the video. So the more subscribers you get, the higher it ranks. So students will find these videos. So if you think it might be helpful, do that. That'd be really, really great. I don't get anything for that. It's not for my benefit at all. But hopefully it will benefit lots of other students, and that's why I'm doing these videos. So this has been 25 minutes or so, so I'm hoping it's been worthwhile. I'll try and cut some of this down in the edit. But other than that, I'm going to wish you all the very best of luck applying for your Band 5 positions. I know on Twitter there are some people who are going to hate the fact that I've been using the word Band 5 loads, but I can't wait to be a Band 5, and I'm going to be the proudest Band 5 walking around those wards, ready to progress onto a Band 6, Band 7 and Band 8 should that be the case. I think bandings are brilliant. They give you aspirations, and they give you where you are in the hospital. I think it's superb. But again, my personal opinion. So without further ado, I'm going to leave it there. Enjoy your application, enjoy university, and most of all, enjoy physiotherapy. See you soon.